With both Suzuki and KTM releasing 400-ish cc dual sports this year, the most obvious question, and the one I've gotten a lot, is how do they compare one against the other? I've now ridden both of these bikes extensively. In fact, I did a full review on the 390 if you want to check that out on the channel. I'll link it for you. And I'm working on my full review of the DRZ, but I feel like at this point I've got enough experience on both to kind of give you my thoughts on the differences between the two as someone who's spent a lot of time on both motorcycles. Before we jump in, I just want to say thanks to Quadlock for sponsoring this video. Their biggest sale of the year is on right now. I'll tell you about it in just a bit. First, before we jump into the comparison, let's just talk about specs of both bikes so that we're all on the same page. First, the Suzuki DR-Z4s. MSRP on the 4S is $89.99. That is $9,000 US. It has a 398cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine, claimed 38 horsepower at 8,000 RPM, claimed 27.3 pound-feet of torque at 6,500 RPM. It is a 5-speed constant mesh transmission. It has fuel injection, curb weight of around 330 pounds, fuel capacity 2.3 US gallons. The seat height is 36.2 inches or 920 millimeters. Front suspension travel is 11 inches or 280 millimeters. Rear suspension travel 11.6 inches or 296 millimeters. Ground clearance 11.8 inches or 300 millimeters. It does have traction control, technically the Suzuki traction control system. ABS is switchable on the rear, and it does have some modes now that people didn't ask for, but they're there. By comparison, the 2025 KTM 390 Enduro R retails for anywhere from $5,500 technically to $6,000 depending on where you buy it. 399cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine with a dual overhead cam. It makes 44.4 horsepower at 8,500 RPMs, claimed. Claimed 28.8 pound-feet of torque. At 7,000 RPMs, it has a 6-speed slipper clutch, electronic fuel injection with ride-by-wire. It weighs somewhere around 365 pounds, depending on who you ask. The seat height is 35 inches. The front suspension travel is 9.1 inches or 230 millimeters. Rear suspension travel is the same. Ground clearance on the 390 is 10.7 inches or 272 millimeters. It has the MTC KTM traction control system. In off-road mode, the rear ABS switches off and you can manage that. And it has ride mode, street, off-road, and it has a TFT display. So color display where the DRZ is monocolor. So in terms of specs, the DRZ is the clear winner in a few categories. It has more clearance, more suspension travel, and it has less weight, although they both suck. They're both very heavy dual sports. The KTM 390 Enduro, however, wins in quite a few more categories in a straight specs comparison. It's much cheaper by $3,000 or more. It has more torque and horsepower. It has a 6-speed transmission. It has a bigger tank, though that barely, 0.1 gallons is not a lot. Better traction control and electronics, and the seat height is lower and more approachable. So on paper, in just terms of like if it was a score, like if it was a game with a clear score, the KTM wins. It's got more wins. It does more things better than the DRZ does, but that is not the whole story. Trust me. You all know by now that Quadlock is my go-to phone case and mount setup for all my bikes and in my 4Runner and my truck. I think their stuff is awesome at any price, but right now is probably the best time of the year to buy if you're looking to add a Quadlock setup to your motorcycle or your car. Why is it the best time of the year to buy? Because Quadlock only has one sale a year. It's their Black Friday sale and it's on right now. Everything on quadlockcase.com is on sale, 30% off, top to bottom. That's mounts, vibration dampeners, phone cases, the whole 9 yards, chargers, everything. On my 390 Enduro R, I had their full setup with the mirror mount, which is a really cool way to save space on your bars, vibration dampener, and the wireless weatherproof charging head, and it worked great. I have done over 10,000 miles of quad locks on my handlebars. I've never had a phone come loose or get damaged at all. That includes my camera because I always use the vibration dampener. I highly recommend Quadlock. It's my favorite mount setup. It's one of the most essential accessories on every bike that I buy. Could not recommend the Quadlock system more, and right now is the best time of the year to get a setup of your own. 30% off everything on their Black Friday sale, link in the description. So let's talk about, in my experience, beyond the specs, what each of these bikes does better than the other. We'll start with the 390 Enduro, which is the clear winner on paper. So the 390 Enduro is better with anything at all involving pavement. pavement, top to bottom, it's the clear winner. It's based on a street bike platform, and it shows. It has better top speed, it's smoother at higher RPMs, and it has a 6th gear. It is all around smoother and feels more refined than the DRZ. The 390 Enduro is also more accessible because it has a lower seat height, it's easier to ride and more forgiving, and it has a far more accessible price. It's much more forgiving for a newer rider. The power comes on slowly, making whiskey throttle and other mistakes less likely and less costly when they do occur. The rider modes and off-road traction control are better on the 390, far more useful and refined than the DRZ. And the rear ABS on the 390 automatically disables when you put it in off-road mode. So it's only one set of button presses to get it turned off, and you can do it on the fly. On the DRZ, you have to stop and hold down the ABS button. And then if you turn the key off and back on, you got to do it again. So that's an advantage for the 390. However, the DRZ shines in some very specific areas. So the DRZ is better when you leave the pavement. Everything about being off the pavement is better on the DRZ. It's designed with a dirt-first philosophy, and it shows. And they have years of experience making this bike, decades, you might say, capable and useful off-road. It has better clearance and suspension travel. Those are a big advantage off-road, but the real winner here is the power delivery. On paper, and again, this is why it's important to actually ride motorcycles before you make these decisions. On paper, the 390 has more power and torque. Though if you look at the RPMs, they are claiming them at higher RPMs, which is a clue. But in reality, it is a night and day difference. The DRZ has gobs of low-end torque and power. Lifting the front wheel is easy in first, second, third gear. It has so much more power when you crack that throttle instantly at the low end to crawl and climb and get sudden bursts of speed that the 390 just doesn't have. DRZ reliability is legendary. Cockroaches, KLRs, and DRZs are the only things that are going to survive a nuclear apocalypse. The aftermarket for the new DRZ will be robust if the old one is anything to go by. I think manufacturers are a little slow to catch up on this one. I don't know if the price is making them wary or if it's just not a good time to be launching new products, but if the old DRZ is anything to go by, any part you can imagine exists for that, so it should have a pretty good aftermarket. And both bikes are heavy for dual sports, but the DRZ is at least lighter than the KTM, and it's noticeable. So that's what each bike does better than the other. But the real question is which bike is best for you, right? The good news is both bikes are pretty good, but if you fall into any of these categories, the decision is pretty easy. If you have a limited budget and want to stretch it as far as possible, get the KTM. The extra $3,000 is enough to buy yourself a full set of riding gear, luggage, and motorcycle camping gear, and you'll still be in less than the cost of a DRZ by itself. I made a video about how to get started in adventure riding for less than $10,000, and it includes that $3,000 setup, which I'll link for you. 390 Enduro R easily slots into the bike category of that overview. So you can get a lot more for your money if you go with the KTM. If you want maximum off-road capability, you got to go with the DRZ. The 390 is capable enough for casual riding, but on anything technical or single tracky, I would much rather be on the DRZ. If you're going to spend over 50% of your time on the highway, get the KTM. 6th gear and much higher top speed, literally over 90 versus I could only get the DRZ to 80, 81 on a good day. Make that KTM a lot more highway friendly. I've cruised for hours on the freeway on the KTM. I would much rather be on that 390 Enduro on the freeway if I have a long road ride. It's just better at it. If you're a newer rider, the 390 Enduro is a better choice for you too. The DRZ is not what I would call a beginner-friendly bike. It never has been. It's too tall and too torquey, and it is not forgiving of mistakes. I whiskey throttled the one I have on my very first trail riding, very first ride, and I almost ended up in the Blackberry Briars bushes or crashing into a tree. And I've been riding for a while, so for a new rider, it can be a little twitchy and difficult to control. I would point you towards the 390. If you're more experienced off-road riding, and off-road riding is a priority for you, get the DRZ. The KTM is anemic, is a nice way of putting it, off-road. It'll do it, but the DRZ is just way more fun and has way more power where you need it. The KTM feels heavy and sluggish. The DRZ, despite weighing almost as much, does not feel as heavy and sluggish at all off the pavement as the KTM does. So to summarize, which one should you choose? Choose the DRZ4s if you prioritize lightweight, maximum suspension travel, ground clearance, and reliability for serious off-road riding, and you're willing to pay more money for those features and the reliability, peace of mind. Choose the 390 Enduro R if you prioritize value, modern performance, a 6-speed transmission, and a full suite of electronic rider aids, which the DRZ has, but they're not as good as the ones on the KTM. They just aren't. I just turn them off. For bounds 50-50 on and off-road riding, and you want something that costs less money to get you into adventure riding. So if you're a newer rider or a more value-conscious rider, the 390 is an obvious choice. But before I jump into my final conclusion, let me just throw a curveball at you. You didn't ask, But everything that is great about the 390 Enduro R is even better on the 390 Adventure R. Better road performance, bigger gas tank, more modes, and the option for factory cruise control eventually, though it's not available here in the US yet, without giving up much at all compared to the Enduro when you leave the pavement. Why buy a heavy dual sport when you could buy the lightest ADV bike on the market instead? You lose almost nothing off-road. Seriously, the difference is very minimal, but eliminate almost all of the disadvantages of the Enduro. This is my personal bias, but as you may know from the video I made, I traded in my 390 Enduro for a 390 Adventure R, and I think it's going to be a lot better. I did that trade for a reason. So at the end of the day, when choosing between the KTM 390 and the DRZ4s, for me, and again, this is for me. I only make choices for myself, okay? I can only evaluate what makes sense for me. I can try to extrapolate, which I've done, right? And say what I think might work for you. But if you want my opinion for me as a rider, who I am at this point in my riding career, the choice is obvious. It's the DRZ, hands down. For me. I'm not saying it's better, I'm saying it's better for me. The KTM is fine off-road, but the DRZ is a blast. Off-road riding is my primary focus, and I have adventure bikes for my long road trips. So despite the ridiculously higher price, and the price of that damn DRZ is too high. I changed my mind, you can't. It's too high, it should be 8,000 at most. The DRZ is the clear winner for me. At the end of the day, it's just more fun to ride, especially in the types of riding I enjoy. I had a blast ripping the DRZ on sandy technical trails in Central Oregon just the other day, and I just can't see the KTM being half as fun. I've ridden it on less sandy, less technical stuff, and did not have half as much fun as I did on the hard stuff with the DRZ. Again, this is my personal opinion based on who I am as a rider right now. There are plenty of reasons to choose the 390 Enduro, many of which I've outlined in this video, but if you ask me to choose, I'm going DRZ4s every time. Now, if you were to ask me whether you should get the new DRZ4s or just buy a used DRZ400, well, that's another video entirely. I just want to say thanks to Quadlock once again for sponsoring this video and remind you that their best sale of the year is on right now. It's the best sale because it's their only sale. 30% off everything on the site. Link in the description. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate you, and please do not forget to be excellent to each other. Thank you.
Excellent!